Oh, 1992, 1989.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening out there. My name is Jeff Fritz, and welcome back to my stream. Today is January 31st, 2019, and we're not going to write code today. I'm wearing my C# hat today. I'm all set. I want to talk about things around technology, but I want to figure out and talk to some folks out there. I know we've got some friends out there in the chat room. I see a bunch of folks chiming in now over there, but I want to talk about growing our career as software developers. This is something that I know a lot of us who are getting started in the industry, who want to find that first developer job. How do you interview? And then for other folks that are a little bit more colorful in the beard here, how do we interview folks and find the right technical people to join us? So I wanted to bring in somebody who's actually done a lot of work exploring this, checking out what's going on out there. So I'm going to bring on, it's John Montgomery over here. Hey, John.
Hi, Jeff. How you doing?
All right. Why don't you give folks a quick intro of who you are and why you know so much about interviewing tech folks?
Sure. I'm the Director of Program Management for Developer Division at Microsoft. So it's Visual Studio, VS Code, .NET, C++, F#, TypeScript, like the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
I've been here 20 years, been a manager for most of it, and I've seen lots and lots of interviews go right, and I've seen lots and lots of interviews go wrong. And so I think my experience is based of both being on the receiving end of some pretty abusive interviews and kind of not really wanting to pay that forward.
Sure. Oh my gosh. I remember interviewing at a startup a couple of years ago before I joined Microsoft, and it was 6 people sitting around a table, and they're asking me all these low-level technical questions. How do you sort this? Right? Give me some pseudocode that reverses a string. And I felt like I was almost caught on an episode of Jeopardy,
Yeah, it's the Jeopardy thing, and it is actually, it kind of comes across like a quiz show. Like we're testing your knowledge, which that's fair. In an interview, you want to get a sense of like what is the person across the table from at the same time, like how many times are you actually called on to reverse a linked list where you can't just go and look up the different ways of reversing a linked list on the internet? Like it's an artificial thing.
Yeah.
Kind of like test, like if I were to suddenly test you on your your video game trivia and ask you in what year was all your base R belong to us. It's like, okay, like you're not going to know the year.
That's why I've got search engines.
Part of this conversation.
And folks there in the chat room, we're going to talk a little bit about how we're starting to interview folks at Microsoft. Please drop your questions in there. We've got a number of moderators here to help us out. We want to hear from you. We want to talk about what it's like to grow your career, and we want to make sure that we address some of your questions so that when you have an opportunity to go out and interview, you're armed with those tools that you need so you can get a better position. You can grow your career and maybe even change your life. So, but you've been talking a bit, John, on a couple of different websites. You've written a great blog post on Medium about the alternative interview framework that we've developed at Microsoft. I say we. I wasn't actually involved in the process, but we, the Microsoft we, right? Why do we want to do something new here? I mean, it's not Jeopardy. It's not trivia. So why something different?
I think a couple of reasons. There was one that was directly relevant to our team, your team and my team,
Yeah.
which was we've been kind of trying to change the job that program managers have, to kind of move to get more deeply engaged with customers and think about how we use data more. And we hadn't been changing our the way we tried to attract and bring people into the team. And the result was we'd have these interviews where we were asking questions, the same questions we would have asked 15 years ago, but we were trying to hire people who kind of looked a little different. So that was one thing. I think another thing was, you know, I'm not necessarily a fast thinker. Like, you hand me a problem and generally I kind of want to sleep on it. But it's actually true of most things. Like, it's very rare you need to make a snap answer to like some like a deep question.
Sure.
You get time, and interviews were all set up around the idea of how quickly can you answer my artificial question? How quickly can you write the pseudocode for reversing a linked list? You know, how many ways can you come up with to define why a manhole cover is round? Like, how many ping pong balls fit into 747? Like, all strange questions that they don't test much. And I think similarly, the other kinds of questions we would ask would be like, tell me about a time when questions. So tell me about a time when you encountered this kind of a problem, which are maybe a little more useful. But the thing I kind of pulled back and I was like, what would we do if we wanted to do it totally differently? And I kind of looked at the Mono team. I looked at the VS Code team. I looked at the .NET Core team, and I'm like, one of the things these folks do really well is they look at their open source community, and when they have people who are kind of showing up in that community, you know, contributing to the open source projects, like they start to, when an opening comes up, they start to think about, yeah, would this person be good for that kind of a job? And like, even I think Miguel de Casa was talking to me, and he was like, yeah, one of the things we do is like, we'll actually hand a real bug or a real feature to somebody, and then we'll just ask them to submit the pull request and do a code review with them. And it made me realize, like, well, that's what you really do. Like, that's the way real work is. And so I kind of thought, like, how do we make the interview more like real work? Like what you would actually do at the job, as opposed to reverse a linked list.
Yeah, the trivia questions.
Yeah, that was the AIF. That led to the alternative interview framework, which I think for a lot of devs in Developer Division, we're doing things that are more like that. For program managers, we really hadn't. So I was kind of looking to make the two things congruent.
Interesting. So, as kind of a side note along that, in the chat room, Lannon asks, some folks recommend putting your side projects on GitHub and making them public so that potential employers can see that. Do we look at GitHub as part of the hiring process and check out someone's side projects and take a look at their code before we start the interview?
I'd say some do, some don't. I mean, the standard thing most of the hiring manager will do, you know, we'll look at your LinkedIn profile if you have one. If you have a link to your GitHub, we'll look at what's in GitHub and kind of take a quick look through. But, you know, I think I'm cautious about kind of saying something like, you know, GitHub is your resume, because like a lot of the folks we try to interview, they're doing work that's inside a corporation, inside a large company, and it's like, yeah, I spend my time at work and I am really, really good there. Either I have very little time for like open source public projects and things like that, because, you know, it turns out I have a family, and, you know, when I'm not at work, like, I spend my time with my family. Like, that's a totally valid thing. And it's like, I don't want to judge somebody by necessarily how many contributions they have on GitHub. I think the other thing is, there are fairly major open source projects that don't live on GitHub. A lot of the Apache Foundation stuff, for example, doesn't necessarily live on GitHub. And so it's like, GitHub isn't necessarily the pure source, but definitely, like, I would say as a candidate, if you want us to look at the work you've done in open source, like, totally point us at the pull requests and the projects, and we'll take a look.
Yeah. Is it necessary to have a LinkedIn profile when applying at Microsoft?
No, it's not. We take resumes via email, back of napkin, you know, whatever, carrier pigeon, whatever comes kind of across and the system can process. because once it gets inside, like we have our own internal system for like managing that. The LinkedIn profile is just kind of like it's kind of like the GitHub thing. It's a nice to have, not a must have.
Okay. So looking at open source, checking out some of the code that folks have already written is a good start if it's there but not a requirement. And certainly folks that are in the open source communities we're already participating with, they're going to get consideration sooner than other folks.
Yeah, I don't know about sooner. I think I'd be cautious about that. And I'd also be cautious because I don't know about you. I have a lot of partially started projects on GitHub that, like, if somebody actually looked at them, I'd be like, yeah, no, that's not actually, no, please don't look at that. Like, so I think there's a conversation between the hiring manager and somebody applying for a job about, do you want me to use this as kind of input into my thinking about how you think about like writing code. And I think that would be true of a lot of folks who, like, you think about a lot of the PMs on my team who they're actually very good coders, but a lot of the code they're putting out is like snippets and samples, and it wouldn't necessarily demonstrate best practices because it's like, I have a sample here that's designed to highlight this one thing, and in fact it's full of errors because the first thing I'm going to do is like start with code cleanup and refactoring. Like, it's like, oh my God, I'm looking at this massive code and it's terrible. It's like, yes, that's because it's step one in a demo script. So
right, it's intended to show these problems.
Exactly, context is super important.
Sure, and I want to make sure that I don't miss that. You dropped something there that I want to make sure that our viewers in the chat room hear. You're writing code actively on GitHub as well.
Badly, yes.
But it's writing code, right? I mean, that's something that's really important for our folks to hear is here's somebody who does work managing folks, but still writing code and still using the tools, getting experience and understanding what's happening in our industry.
Yeah, I'm a little terrified now if people go look at my GitHub profile, what they're going to see, but yeah. There's a lot more private than public for sure.
Sure. So let me just take another question here from the chat room. There's a question. Where did it go? I just saw it. Oh my gosh. Do the LinkedIn profile endorsements, do they mean anything? Do they help at all? I think the answer there is not really.
Depends. I think again, it's one of those things. I would view like a LinkedIn recommendation as again, it's a nice to have. And if I know the person who gave the recommendation, it might be one of those things where I might like reach out to them and say, tell me a little more about your experience with this person, as kind of it amounts to kind of what you'd see in an old fashioned resume about this is a personal recommendation. So, okay, I'll go and chat maybe with this person if I know them.
Okay.
But it's
the technology endorsements, not so much.
It's super hard to tell because it's especially like if there are people who have actually written something like, you know, I worked with this person in this capacity and boy, I was really impressed with this. That's a little more useful than just I endorse this person for, you know, service-oriented architecture, which like I think I've been endorsed for SOA, and it's like, yeah, I don't know that I want to be endorsed for SOA. That was a bad period.
Want to roll that off? It's an older endorsement. Don't need that anymore. Lannon asks, oh my gosh, I was just looking at it. What's the opinion on self-learning on the job outside of your set duties? I think I know the answer to that question, but I want to make sure.
I'd go for 2 thumbs up. Like, one of the things that I think most employees at Microsoft run into pretty quickly is they'll have a conversation with their manager that kind of goes, well, you know, how do I learn and grow? Like, that's an explicit part of what we call the connect process, which is the process, you know, employees and managers use to periodically have a conversation about, you know, what did I do? You know, how am I doing? What do I think I could have done better? Right. And part of that is like, what am I going to do in the next period to learn and grow? And I think one of the conversations every manager has is, well, you know, think about it as like 20 to 30% is probably some kind of structured learning, like you take a course or you read a book, or, you know, there's something like formal. And then the rest of it, 70, 80%, is basically like the self-guided, self-learning on the job. Like, you pick a project, you try to do a thing. And like, it's a very explicit conversation I'll have with folks when they say like, I want to learn how to do blah. It's like, great, I'm going to give you an assignment that amounts to blah. And your job for the next whatever, like 3 months is to like 20% of your time, 10% of your time, whatever, to learn blah. Like, I think in the last 3-4 years, it was a lot of people on my team were like, this machine learning thing, I think it's going to be big. And we're like, yeah, it's going to be big. And they're all, how do I learn about machine learning? And I'm like, hey, here's some books, like here's some code, like, the thing that became ML.net, I think grew up from a bunch of people who were on our team were,
okay,
hey, we want to learn about ML. And like, okay, like, great, go.
Let's use our technologies. Let's see how we can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to take one more question from the chat, and then I want to get back into talking about the interview framework. There's a question here about, from Enzima about coding terminologies. It's hard to remember everything. But what if you're a good coder, but you don't remember all the terminologies? You don't remember how to talk about it very well. As long as you can get around the topic, does that score well with interviewing?
Kind of depends. I think depends on level and depends on role. Like there are roles at every kind of large corporation where a big part of your job is explaining and expressing and communicating. Like, this is what we built. This is how we built it. This is why we built it that way. And in that case, it's the command over the the common language is kind of important, because that's going to be the language, the common language that everybody is going to speak. If it's like more like, my job is actually mostly going to be writing code and interacting with my other team members, and we're all working on the same project, and my primary mode of interaction is going to be like the code I write, like that, the manager is probably going to say, like, this is a person who just, like, they knock it out of the park with the code they write. But when put in a setting where they have to explain why they did things, they may struggle with the explaining why in English words, but the code is always good. And like, that's fine. Like, that takes all kinds to actually create software, right?
Absolutely. And those folks that can explain things better, we're going to want to make sure that they're in front of customers, that they're talking to other developers. They're helping with documentation. They're producing videos. Something like that. Something.
Yes. Or just working with other teams within the company. Like in Microsoft, we have lots and lots of teams that collaborate on similar things. And, it's super common that you bungee somebody into another team, and just to explain, here's what we did and why we did it that way. Here's what we learned. And maybe here's some feedback for you. So to like, we had these problems, could you please fix them? Maybe like, here's something we learned that we want to share. And sometimes that, that communication is useful.
Absolutely. And I'll just drop in this final comment, and then we'll get back to the framework here. DJ Ent Nathan says, recently started with ML.net. The docs are really easy to understand. Thank you, Nathan. That's great to hear. I'm sure
a lot of work went into that.
Oh, yeah. So we talked about, how to get qualified. We're going to look at different ways to get folks in the door. But when we do get somebody who's qualified for an interview, a couple days before, we're going to send those folks an email and say, hey, welcome, you're part of the interview process. And we ask them to take a look at a couple things, right?
Yeah, so I'll say a couple of things. The first is the thing I'm about to talk about is what I do for developer division program managers. Okay. So this is it's localized to like our team, you and me.
Sure.
There are other teams around the company that do similar things. And I've actually, after I wrote that Medium post, I found a whole bunch of other teams that either were doing similar things or wanted to learn to do this. But the pattern we have is a couple of days before the interview, you'll get a piece of mail or a conversation with the hiring manager for the role or something, where basically the hiring manager says, we're going to do this thing when your interview is going to have this shape, and it's going to be like one scenario we do throughout the day. And, somewhere between like 12 and 72 hours before the interview, you'll get a packet that includes all the data we have about the problem. So it's like a starting place. Now, it's not all the data. It's usually trimmed down to like 3 to 5 pages of like information and so on, so that basically you can do your homework. And that, for me, really, that's important, because it's again, it's one of those things where if I expect a candidate to come in and know as much as I do, at 9 a.m. on the day of the interview and they've never looked at the problem before, it's like, okay, like it's just gonna not gonna be awesome, right?
It's not realistic.
No. And even if you're like even if you know the domain, like Visual Studio, .NET, you have Visual Studio 2019 preview installed, and you have strong opinions, like the question we may be asking may be buried like so deep in some like set of like, I don't know, either telemetry data we have or usability reports we have or something else, that it's like, oh, I only had my personal experience. Now I can see you've done this research, right? So,
oh yeah.
So they get time to kind of be with it, to do whatever Google searches they need to do to figure out like, okay, I have my head around the problem. And then they land here.
Mm-hmm.
And, we basically run somewhere between 3 and 5 interviews that follow that one scenario throughout the day. And it kind of follows the way you would actually approach the problem, kind of. So it starts usually with, let's look at the customer. Tell me how you would segment the customer, how you would research the customer, how you think about the customer and the customer problem. Like, let's get clear on the problem, because like the biggest disconnect usually I see is, we're designing a feature for a customer that doesn't exist but we think is cool, or
Mm-hmm.
Or you found a customer who has a real problem, but you're unclear on what the actual like problem is.
Yes, that qualifying, right?
Yep. The qualifying and the specificity, like number one thing we hear about Visual Studio as negative feedback is like, it's slow. And it's like, slow at what?
Exactly. Give me some context. Tell me a little bit more about that.
And so like we need to kind of, we need to get clear on that with the customer. And that's part of that first interview. And then the second one, we start to get into kind of more the clarity on problem. And then like, let's start to talk about like, what kinds of concepts would you present that might address this problem? And then from there, you kind of go to the specific implementations and how would you go and design this and build it? Like, let's talk about the architecture, things like that. And then you kind of talk about, okay, how are you actually going to introduce it into the product? Like, if you're talking about, you've come up with something that's going to like change the flow of the way IntelliSense works, like we did with IntelliCode, like,
yes.
Okay, like let's actually talk about like, how do you insert machine learning IntelliSense in the product so that A, people can find it, but B, it doesn't disrupt the flow, right? So there's this whole thing as a program manager you need to think about. And so the day kind of takes you through that whole process. And it's super interesting. We actually did one of these yesterday over for one of the roles we have on our Azure tools team.
Okay.
Question I asked this person at the end was like, so how was this process for you? I'm always curious. Like,
Sure.
I want to learn. And her response was, it was actually kind of like a very intense day at the office. And I was like, good, like we nailed it. That was the goal.
Yeah. To summarize a little bit, it's really, what's it like to actually work with the candidate for a full day doing their job, and they've done the research that you would expect you should normally do before you would report to the office and start working on a project.
And it's a direct parallel to the Mono example. We have an issue, like pick an issue out of our backlog and like work it, like show us what code you would write and what decisions you would make, how you would think about code structure, and like is the code that we actually get back, is it readable, is it performant, is it secure, like that. It's the same thing. It's like, that's a day in the office.
Yeah. A couple questions from the chat room. Off the Zero Bobby asks, it's probably a team by team thing, but what's Microsoft's? He's looking for the general Microsoft stance, but what's your stance on remote workers? Bobby works 100% remotely and loves it.
Mm-hmm. Well, within developer division, like company-wide, it definitely varies team by team. And, some, I will certainly say, like, some roles work a lot better remote and some roles work a lot better local. Like, obviously you're remote. Yeah. Love the hat collection.
Thank you.
People like, Scott Hanselman, he's remote. We have, even my team probably has a couple dozen individuals who are remote. And on top of that, we have like, I have a team in Shanghai. We have a team in Boston. We have a team in Switzerland. I have, people in London, we have people in Prague, we have people in Finland, like people down in Argentina. So like we have people all over the world for Developer Division. And, I think we try very hard to make sure that if somebody is like really good, like we're like, and they can't relocate, like, and the role allows for it, yeah, like we'll figure out potentially how to kind of accommodate like remote workers, and we do a pretty good job of it. Like, I think the pattern we've gotten into about making sure that people work in teams, so the capital T teams, so that like you can sign in at any time and you can see the history and things like that, or Slack or something like that. Like there's like a record for creating meetings. We're pretty good about making sure like all meetings have some kind of an interactive link, and you can you can video into it. We're a lot better about that, I think, than even we were a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, I can definitely attest to that. My gosh. And having great camera, great microphone helps to actually put you in the room and have people feel your presence.
Yeah. So we're pretty good at it, I would say, and pretty accommodating to it. Doesn't work for all roles. Like my job, I don't think I could do remote. There's just too much that happens, here in 98052. And too much of my team is here, but it's a little different, I think, for me than it is for like normal people.
Absolutely, right. And different roles, different teams that you're working on mean you're going to need to be located differently. Somebody working on documentation, community outreach, getting customer feedback, to be remote. And where I am, right between New York City and DC, in Philadelphia, there's a lot of customers that I can reach out to and talk with quickly to get that outside of Redmond feedback. So it works well for my particular position.
And it's even possible, like I have, one of my designers is in Prague, one of my designers is in Finland, and my head of design is in London. And so like we're talking about, London is 9 hours different from here. Finland is another hour, Prague is another hour, I think. So it's like they're pretty thoroughly offset. And then the whole team in Shanghai, basically, I think that's generally a 15-hour offset. So like even with these roles, we figure out how to make it work. And it usually requires some accommodation on both sides. Like, maybe you're doing a one-on-one at, 5 a.m, local time, but that's fine. Like,
we can work around that as need be.
And we can turn it into a superpower. I think one of the things I've also learned, you nailed it. Like you're local to a bunch of people that, I would have to get on a flight and fly 6 hours to go meet. Yeah. Like the same's true. Like my design director can tap into London-based talent that I would never even know existed. Right. So if you think about it as is there a superpower here that we can unlock, as opposed to there's a problem we have to work around, it kind of opens possibilities.
There's a great possibility that I've heard another organization describe, where they do have folks located, geographically in North America, in East Asia, in Europe, and they call it chasing the sun. So in this way, they've got support folks in each one of those major centers, and you effectively have people working 24 hours.
I mean, if you think about something like Azure, the sun never sets on Azure, right? And they both have data centers all over the world, and they have engineering resources all over the world. So you think about a 24/7 service, like it culturally, you actually need that. And therefore you need to figure out how to make that super smooth. Mm-hmm. Obviously we're still learning, we're getting better. I think, Developer Division, we just announced a policy for like basically saying like remote workers, like part of our travel and expenses is about like, we expect you to come here to Redmond several times, like during the year, to make sure that you get actual human FaceTime.
Yeah.
And I think we're doing a team week in May where pretty much everybody who's remote, like they're going to be here for a week. We'll see how that one runs. That'll be fun.
Oh yeah, that's going to be very interesting. I'm thrilled to see that as a remote employee, because there's this concept of Microsoft life and what's it like to be in the Microsoft culture, and to have that dedicated time to really work on culture and interacting with these folks that you only really see through a camera, through a screen, is it's very valuable. That's important for folks that do want to work remotely.
So the cultural thing, may I just say something really, really, 20 years ago when I joined the company, I came here from a different place. I came here from California.
Yeah.
And all the refrigerators were stocked with free soft drinks. Never worked at a company before that had free soft drinks, and I was very excited, right? But they were Talking Rain, and I'd never seen Talking Rain before, and I never saw Talking Rain outside a Microsoft refrigerator. I actually thought, I was a lot younger, I actually thought Microsoft owned Talking Rain, and it was like our branded thing. So they kind of part of the culture. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's just like my little part of the culture. Maybe I shouldn't have shared that. But yeah, so I was a lot younger. I had more hair.
Oh man, and I'm going to make sure that the hats stay in place, as I've noticed that I turn grayer and grayer. Let me tell you, John.
Well, at least we'll have hair.
Yeah. I want to call out. There's a comment here from Franklin in the chat room. Just got out of an interview with a candidate. It was the first time I was able to interview not by asking dull questions and improvising some coding samples, but actually pair programming and discussing about how to implement the bug fix. It showed much more than just traditional questions. That's pretty powerful to hear.
It's super. And, one of the things we've been hearing, so we there's a technology we've been working on for a while called LiveShare, Visual Studio LiveShare. So it basically enables that kind of like real-time pair programming from VS to VS Code, or VS Code to VS Code, or VS to VS. And it's kind of really interesting because we were thinking about it mostly for the scenario where, like, hey, I'm having a problem with some chunk of code. You're the expert. I'm gonna like reach out to you, and it's kind of like Google Docs but for code. Like, we would work on it together, right?
Oh yeah.
And what we quickly found was, like, people were using it for exactly that. They were using it for pair programming during an interview, a collaborative interview. Like, we're going to work together to solve a problem. And so, like, you're remote from me. Like, we can do that. I can see the code you're typing, and therefore I can kind of get the internals of what you're thinking. And not only that, I can help insofar as, actually, I'm probably not as good a coder as you are, but you could help me. I'm totally fine for that. But yeah, that the technology is getting better and better for like collaboration, for collaborative interviewing, I would say.
Oh yeah. And anybody can get Visual Studio LiveShare. You don't have to, it's completely free feature. It comes with it's an extension to add into Visual Studio Code, and it doesn't just work with Microsoft technologies. Right? Yeah. It'll work with Java, it'll work with Go.
Yeah, it's actually super, super cool. I mean, if you're running VS Code with the Java extensions that we built with Red Hat loaded, like if I attach from Visual Studio, big Visual Studio, I get Java completions and Java debugging.
In Visual Studio 2017. Yeah.
Now, what it's really doing is obviously it's executing it on your system, and like I'm using the debug protocol and the language service protocol to kind of grab that stuff and pull it local, but it's still kind of cool.
Oh my gosh, yes. Very cool. And It's in Visual Studio 2017 as an extension, but it's in Visual Studio 2019 natively.
Built in, yep.
So folks that are watching out there, you can download Visual Studio 2019. We have a link to Preview 2 just below us here on the wall. Want you to check that out, download it, give it a try. It won't interfere with your currently installed Visual Studios. And it's free as a preview.
One quick caveat to it won't interfere with your Visual Studio. So Visual Studio, as you know, like lays down Visual Studio, but it also lays down like .NET Framework, Android SDK, NDK, Java JDK, things like that. All those like SDKs are what we call singletons. There can only be one on the box. So I've actually seen a couple of cases where customers are like, hey, I installed it and it did in fact interfere. And I'm like, yeah, that's because it pulled down like a different version, a different Windows SDK or a different Android.
Right.
Okay, sure. So one quick caveat, don't want to undermine the overall message and enthusiasm, because mostly it works.
Yeah, right. Those Android, right, that you can only have one Android set of SDKs installed, those external dependencies.
Yeah. Our internally, it's completely side by side. Yeah.
There was another question I wanted to touch here. Where is it? So one of our friends here, Mike Eaton, currently looking for a new job, and it's amazing how many folks tell him we're just not that good at the remote thing. And he's been remote for some extent for his entire career, and full-time remote since 2001. It can work with the right support, and that's definitely something
It's totally true.
that is very true for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Gosh, the stuff around LiveShare, we've seen it used here on stream. We did a great talk last week with Allison Buchholz.
Yep.
Buchholz Al. I'll make sure I pronounce her name right. And we showed a little bit of LiveShare. We showed IntelliCode. That's tremendous, getting artificial intelligence into Visual Studio.
Yeah, that's been an our data scientists. We kind of challenged him and kind of said, like, what would be the most, like, the simplest thing you could do? Let's just, again, it's like 18 months, 2 years ago, and he came back. He'd written a full, like, Visual Studio extension that plugged into it, and it was kind of amazing. Even at the beginning, like the first model, he trained on a bunch of like C# GitHub repos, and he came back, and suddenly, like, what was normally just the alphabetical completion lists that you get after you hit dot, like, things were floating to the top, and we were like, that was like, we at the data we were getting back was telling us like it was 40% accurate, like that list, and then he kept refining the model. It got to like 60% and then 75%, and somewhere around 85%, it's like it starts to be magic. You're hitting dot, and like we kind of know, even if the context is changing, like it's not just like a static list anymore. The context of where you are in your code is going to change what the completions are, and we were like, this is like IntelliSense, like superpowered, and now we're starting to look at all of the other places, you know, when not starting, we've been working on this, all the other places in your code where like machine learning can help, like during a code review, like let's just take a quick look at all of the like the code that you're going in against, and, you know, have you matched style, like are you following security practices, you know, what were the other comments that came in on code that looked like yours, and have we eliminated those? Like, there's a lot of possibility for what ML can actually do to change things.
I feel like where we are with the concept of the Roslyn analyzers, those little tools that run in Visual Studio that call out and say, oh, you know, you can do this better with this code technique.
Yep.
When we start getting machine learning into those, right, and we can say, you know what, this isn't, we've analyzed this and it doesn't manage memory well, or we've analyzed this and, you know, there's a better recommended way based on how it executes. Oh my gosh, there's going to be some tremendous capabilities that come out of that.
Yeah, and what's been interesting is, I think we did C# first, and then we started to pile on other languages. So it was like C#, Python, Java. We now have one kind of working for C++, XAML. Like the cool thing about all this source code that lives in GitHub is we can train on these public repositories, and we can build pretty good models for just about everything. C++ is probably the hardest to train on, because it turns out on the standard library, like at that point you kind of get these, you know, you get Unreal shaped code, which is kind of different from, you know, maybe like Chromium shaped code, like they look different. But you can do a lot. And in terms of what you're talking about, like, yeah, I can totally imagine light bulbs popping up where it's like, you know, we found a better way to do this, and it's totally possible. And then the other thing we're doing, and I think we've even demoed this publicly, is I know we've demoed it publicly, is like, you know, some customers have very large private repos, and so the ability to securely train a model on your own private repo and have that available to you and only you, like that kind of idea of like, I can take the base IntelliCode and then add my own private stuff on top of it. That's another superpower, because again, you think about any large company, they're going to have their own coding conventions.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And it's like, great, rather than kind of writing them down or trying to build a bunch of editor config rules, we can actually just train on, you know, your best repos and start to use that. And it's like, you know, it's never leaves the four walls of your company, basically.
Yeah. So, and we saw a little bit of this with Allison last week, and some of our folks in the chat room that are contributing, working with our some of the projects we're working on. We're actually starting to train models for some of the projects here on stream, and then we put the model link inside of the GitHub repository. So folks
sweet.
that are working with the libraries that we're building can download that model and start using that with their project.
Yep.
There was a comment here. I want to make sure I call it out. That IntelliCode was great for folks that are learning. Here it is from Magnus. Magnus says that not just IntelliCode, but LiveShare as well. For students who are working together on projects, it's a lot easier than what the work that they used to do. And I also think there's a germaphobe thing that happens there with LiveShare as well, right? You're using your own keyboard. You're not sharing and passing a keyboard around and putting your fingers on the same thing there. That's I've seen folks say
about that, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kinda cool.
In the chat room, our friend Moz, Elizabeth, says, would anyone take a job for less money if it's at a bigger, more stable company? So going from maybe a startup or a mid-sized company to a maybe not as big as Microsoft, but to a larger enterprise, right? Does that make sense for career growth for folks?
Depends, I mentor a lot of people, and a lot of the conversations are things like, are questions like that. And I think the answer I have, kind of the general shape of the answer, is when you think about what you do and what you like doing, like there are usually 4 things that kind of get you up and get you excited about coming into work, right? The first one is who I get to work with. So I get to work with Jeff Fritz, so I'm going to keep working at Microsoft as long as Jeff Fritz is here, because I like Jeff.
Okay.
It's the people you work with, your team, things like that, right? There's the role you have. Am I a dev? Am I a PM? Am I a manager? Am I an individual contributor? Like, what's my role?
Mm-hmm.
The third one is like, what's the technology or product I'm working on? Like, am I excited about that? And then the last one is kind of like, who am I building for? Like, who's my customer? And so like this question about like, would I take a different role? I think usually goes to like, am I happy where I am? Like these 4 things. Like there's this other layer underneath all that, which is like, how much do I get paid for that? But like these 4 things actually have a huge impact on whether you are excited about coming into work, which means, can I bring myself? Like, can I bring all of me? Or am I just like, I get in at 9:01 and I'm leaving at, 4:59 and I got my hour lunch, and basically I'm hating every other time. That's not that, right? I'm just going to limit it. Like if you're not kind of excited about it, maybe a conversation is like, what gives me joy? What of those 4 things is my primary motivator, my secondary motivator? And then like, would this other thing, this other job, would it give me something like that? So like valuing stability, like I would say I brought in people from startups. I brought in like people to work for me who were CEOs of startups. And they're like, you know what? Like, I'm going to be part of a much bigger thing. I can make much more impact. Some of it's like on the personal side. It's like, I need a company where I know they're going to make payroll. I know that there's like, if I stay, like there's a career path for me.
Yeah.
Here's another big one. Like in today's environment, like, hey, there's healthcare, and there's pretty good healthcare.
Yes.
Like these are little things. So it's like, it's never like it's never a pure salary conversation. It's the whole thing of like people will take jobs at lower pay to get something else they want. Is it going to start at the biggest thing is it going to start teaching me something I don't know that I'm excited about learning? So, would I switch jobs and like do something totally different and start a new path? There are people on my team who have, I have a Russian literature degree, right? So I've taken multiple different paths in my career that led me to kind of doing what I'm doing. And each time there's like that thing over there seems super, super interesting.
Yeah.
Let's try that. And I'll try to learn it. And there's this, I tell everybody, there's generally a 2-year window when you start to do something new. There's like this window that starts to tick of like, how long does it take me before this new thing that I've been asked to do is it just becomes like this autonomic response, right? And at that point you can really start to like just crush it, right?
Oh yeah.
But it's 6 weeks to learn a habit and about 2 years to actually like bake it in, so you don't even have to think about that pattern.
Oh, definitely. So, and it comes back to, and I think somebody here in the chat room said it well, trading pay for comfort, for quality of life. You're going to give up a little bit of that if you want to get a little bit more aggressive, but you might get paid more.
You might. And there's also risk. I think is part of
Yeah.
it. How much, one question that I get asked a lot about, kind of if you go to a startup, the first question you have to ask yourself is like, am I willing to go 3 years without pay?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's like,
Oh,
some people are. It's like, yeah, I see the upside. The people I'd be working with, I think are brilliant. They're smart. I like working with them. The problem is interesting, and the potential payout's huge. Other
yeah.
people, like, no, like the thing I need is that constancy. Uh,
Yeah. Now, a question that I want to make sure we get to is, and I know we've got a hard stop here very soon. I want to, before we talk about Visual Studio stuff, I want to ask about how we qualify folks who might have, I think you might call them invisible disabilities, right? The autistic folks, or maybe somebody who has dyslexia. How does that dial into the interview process? Does that significantly affect? Do we make accommodations for those folks?
yeah. So the this whole concept of inclusiveness
Yeah.
is very important, and Microsoft has actually done a bunch to kind of bring in people who exist somewhere kind of on the high end of the autism spectrum. We've hired many people who do that, and there is accommodation. Like the first thing is the hiring managers. They need to understand that, like, the interaction brings might be different from the other people on their team, and that's okay, because like that like they're producing like good quality work. Or
Mm.
bring in somebody who is vision impaired to an interview, like they may need someone to walk them from room to room, which is like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Or if you bring in somebody who is hearing impaired, they might need an interpreter. Okay, like, so I think the process, it's in a truly inclusive environment. Like, it's about creating the accommodation and creating that sense of inclusion to recognize the innate value that the person could bring. I think that's actually a core thing. That's the difference, I would say, between an inclusive interview process and an exclusive interview
Oh
process.
yeah.
Like, if you think about an interview process where I'm going to precision question the heck out of you to test your knowledge in an area where I'm a domain expert, like, we have people on this team who have been here writing, back-end compiler optimizers for 25 years, right? Um, and like, it is super unlikely that somebody with, whatever, 5 years of experience is going to be able to go toe to toe in their area of domain expertise. And if we treated it as a hostile interrogation, like, man, that's going to feel nasty for everybody. When you create a truly inclusive loop, you recognize that, everybody can learn, right? And
Hmm. Hmm.
B, everybody has something to bring to the table. Me, I bring like really nice jackets and occasionally a pocket square. But like, there's something everybody is bringing, and you interview to make them to enable them to show their best self. That's the thing you're trying to get to. And then the biggest thing is, and it actually gets back to that previous question about, like, would I take a lower paying job for some to trade off something? It's
Mm.
like, you know, do I fit with the people? Like, do I feel like I fit and I belong and it's home? Because think about it, like, life's too short, right? We're going to spend a good portion of our waking hours with the people we're working with. And it's like, it matters a lot if you feel included. And that feeling, when you nail that feeling, you really can bring your best self, and that means you're going to be contributing the most. So it's kind of this positive self reinforcement loop. And I think it starts with the interview. And if the interview feels hostile, it's going to kind of step on the wrong foot.
And that kind of leads to, there's a follow up question, a comment here in the chat room I want to touch on. It sounds like the new process can be subjective. I know there's a follow up process that happens at the end of the day, a post mortem. How do we make sure that we avoid any unintended biases as part of that?
So, like, I'll be super clear. Every process has bias. Like, there's kind of no way to get around it. I think the thing you try to do is to recognize and confront bias. And so that's a lot of what we did in kind of creating this process, was to acknowledge that people bring their stuff, they have opinions, and it's going to leak in different ways. But there are three key things we do throughout the day as the candidate moves from interview to interview. The interviewers have to be super clear. They're not going to give any body language or micro message or anything else that says, here's how I'm thinking about, my assessment. Am I going to recommend a hire or not? Right. So the first thing is like, no body language that kind of gives that away. So that by the way is super tough. Like,
oh yeah.
If you just had the awesomest interview on earth, like the energy you're going to bring is like, I have to hold it in, right? So there's that. And then so at the end of the day, we have the recap, and it's usually 30 minutes. And every interviewer is together. If they can't be present for whatever reason, because sometimes it's late in the day and people need to be home, take kids home, whatever it is, like they'll be videoed in or called in. And the very first thing we do is simultaneously, everybody basically is going to give their recommendation, and it can be a piece of paper with, we all flip a piece of paper at the same time that says, am I recommending that we hire the person or not? It can be a hand gesture. We try not to use like biasing hand gestures, but something that basically says, we're all going to vote at once, and then the next thing is kind of a carefully led conversation about why did the people who were recommending a hire recommend? Why did the people who weren't recommending a hire recommend? And we talk about what we saw during our interview. And that's the other key part, is kind of like you try to frame it just within the thing you saw. Because it turns out like you bring somebody through one of these loops and they might be really good at 4 of the areas or 3 of the areas, and just not have really kind of like nailed the other parts. And the end result could be like, you know what, we're going to proceed with this person despite that, because it's not like you need unanimity. What you need is to make sure all of those experiences are heard. And then, by the way, the second part of that meeting usually is there something we can improve in the process? Like just yesterday we did a loop, and it turns out like during the lunchtime portion, we took somebody to the cafeteria in Building 16, and we took them there at noon. And as you know, from trying to eat lunch in Building 16 at noon, man, there was a line.
There was
busy.
A
line for everything.
Yes.
And not only that, it turns out the line she was in, they screwed up her order, and so they had to wait in line. So that was a little, so like, okay, it can be like little process things. It can be, it can be all sorts of things, but it's like debug the process as well. And that becomes part of the corpus of how do we improve going forward. So that's, but again, there's bias in this. Like there are going to be questions that we didn't think to ask. In the early days when we were trying this framework out, like we made this realization pretty quickly. Like we weren't like, the customers that we talk to, they're software developers, so they write code, and so they think in code, and like we want to make sure that we can relate. The process as we originally designed it didn't have a portion where we were like, show me how like you're gonna write code and how you can relate to the customer. And so we had to kind of change the process to make sure we were interviewing for that. Yesterday the realization was, actually we don't. The process we're using doesn't have a big chunk where we talk about a people manager and what are the values that a people manager is going to bring and how they approach like growth of people. So we learn, we iterate, we improve. It's not a static process, right?
Fantastic. So I know you got to get going here in just a few minutes. I would not be doing any favors for our audience if I didn't ask about Visual Studio and the new things that came out in .NET. It feels like last week was like preview release week. We had a .NET Core preview release go out and a Visual Studio preview release.
Yeah, there's a ton in these releases, and I think VS for Mac is going to update pretty soon too. So, yeah, we're working hard on the 2019 wave. .NET Core 3, I think there are perf improvements that are like we're really trying to get that ASP.NET Core perf nailed and really just keep getting it better and better. There's a lot of work we're doing around like improving microservice development.
Oh yeah.
A bunch of stuff that exists, but there's patterns and things we want to do there. The big thing for .NET Core 3 has been like the addition of kind of the Windows client frameworks, Windows Forms, WPF, and like starting to build those out on .NET Core so that you can get like desktop application isolation where it's not dependent on the full framework, which actually solves the singleton problem really nicely.
Oh yeah.
core for side by side. Like, and then I think ML.NET and the addition of AI into into .NET, like that's going to be a pretty, like, I'm pretty impressed with where .NET Core 3 is going to be. And then Visual Studio 2019, like, man, there's performance improvements and user experience improvements. Like, I think the initial thing we did was we kind of talked about the UI design back in whatever October, and I think we got feedback on that and pivoted. But a lot of the things that we've been kind of hearing from especially like people who are new to Visual Studio is just it's completely overwhelming. And so this is a really interesting design problem for the design team. Like, how do we actually make it more approachable for somebody who's kind of maybe first time, and at the same time make sure that we don't break all the muscle memory that the people who've been using it for 18 years have. And that's been a very interesting design challenge. A lot of feedback on the blue theme. Yeah, sorry about that. But then there's
but it's an option, right?
It's an option. I mean, we talked about live share. We talked about IntelliCode.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bunch of get to code experiences, a lot of things we're trying to do around version control generally to improve that experience and kind of take that little team explorer window and make it much more useful. Integrations with GitHub, integrations with Azure DevOps, things like that. I think but for me, the hallmark for most people, the thing they're probably going to most notice, like C# 8 support, probably a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
But like raw performance improvements, raw stability improvements, like we just want to make sure that Visual Studio is like continues to get rock solid and better and better. And that's one of the biggest things is we want to make sure that like every Visual Studio 2017 customer looks at 2019 and is like, I got to have me one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to leave Smab with the last word because I know you got to cut out. Anybody think that Microsoft would finish Visual Studio before a build conference? We haven't announced a date for a build conference. There's a time frame that it's been the past few years. Any chance that will be done before build or even announce at build? I don't know if we can comment on that, can we?
What I'll say is like Visual Studio releases aren't tied to major events. We can do it at any time. And last 2017, we actually did. We released completely separately from conference. Yeah. And so we're not tied to releases. And I think the second thing I will say is we're aiming to like not have a big delta between the completion of Visual Studio 2017, 15.8, and 2019 and when that one comes out. Like we want that to be a short time. Like we don't want to leave people hanging. So I think all signs point to we're going to try very, very hard to have a solid general availability as quickly as we can, modulo quality. Like that thing about perf and reliability, we want to make sure that's satisfied for this. So
absolutely,
the date, like tying to an event is like much less important than nailing that. But current course and speed,
take a look
not so far out.
Yeah, take a look at Preview 2. The download's below. Check it out. You might find that and there's some folks in the chat room saying performance has been great and it's done a great job for them. They're waiting for some of the Xamarin stuff to get up to speed in it, but it's in a great place.
Yeah, I'll keep going just for a second because on the Xamarin thing, it's an item of passion. Like I think the work that team has done in the past, especially like the past 10, 12 months has been amazing because like identifying Android build performance as a thing, identifying, the designer performance, like the team has been very focused on especially improving the perf and reliability of that experience, the reliability of debugging and things like that. And like, the results we're starting to see are very, very, very promising. So I'm super excited about that. Hats off to Miguel and his team. They've done amazing work there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate you joining us here this morning. The folks in the chat room, they really had some good questions here. It looks like they really appreciated you joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
All right. I'll let you go. Thanks so much. And I'm going to cut back over to just me. There we go. See you, John. Take care.
Bye.
All righty. And I will hang that up. Cool. Thanks so much. That was great. I was so glad that John was able to join us and really talk about some of the things that are going on at Microsoft to help advance people's careers, to get you folks up to speed. Let's see here. And I hope that was valuable for you out there, for viewers, for folks that are looking to grow your career. There's a lot that's happening there. I shared the link a little bit earlier to John's article out on Medium. I want you to check that out. And if you're an organization, if you're a manager, somebody who manages technical folks, and you want to embrace, you want to try out some of these things that Microsoft is using to identify and recruit and keep technical folks, take a look at his Medium post. There's some great tips there that I think folks are going to be interested in using in hiring. So that there was a couple good comments there. Our friend, I don't know her full name. F. Hinkle is here. She pointed out around bias. How can we avoid that and having multiple steps in the interview process and letting those folks join in and make those final comments at the end of the day, I think is important to get everybody on the same page and try and eliminate potential bias between folks. Mike Jolly says, I realize the background is not real, but I vote Jeff wearing a football helmet during a future stream. I have one behind me there. And it's kind of the reflection here today. It snowed overnight, and there's a little bit of extra light coming in from my windows here, and it's reflecting on me. A Super Bowl special on Monday, I don't know about that one. That might be a little bit far here. Magnus says, time really flew. I kept thinking we kept the guest only 10 minutes. Oh, no, that was an hour we had with John. And yeah, right, if I lean forward, right, I've got the green screen here behind me. You see I have the green lights that bounce up and reflect. I know I didn't catch everybody's comments there, but I know this is a topic that John's very interested in getting out there and sharing with folks, particularly around folks that could be potential hires, could be folks that may want to join Microsoft in the future. You're right, Robert. It was very generous of him to give us that hour. I actually scheduled this about 5-6 weeks in advance, and granted the winter holidays were in there, but to have somebody with that level of authority and influence at Microsoft join us was definitely special, and I'm thrilled that he was able to join us. And he didn't quite say it, but Microsoft has kind of tipped our hand by naming the product Visual Studio 2019. You know it's going to come out in 2019. All right, let me see here. We would normally go for about another hour here. What do you think? Should we write a little bit of code? Yeah, definitely. The video on demand, this will be available a little bit later today over on YouTube. And we'll New Year's Eve Visual Studio 2019 release. No, Robert, no. We can go take a look at some pull requests and things if folks are interested in doing that. Mike Jolly says, love the guests we've been having on. Looking forward to having Julie back soon when we're not stuck in Azure config. Yeah. I think I need to start setting up our February guests. Next week we're gonna have Tyler joining us, right? Let me make sure I pronounce his name right here. I believe, yeah, we're gonna have Tyler Leonhardt join us. He's from the PowerShell team, and we've been doing a little bit of work around building a good PowerShell experience, a good debugger experience for our Stream Deck tools. Next week, Tyler's going to join us, and we're going to take some of our PowerShell scripts, some of our scripting that we've been doing around that build experience, and make it much more PowerShell friendly, right? Personally, I don't write PowerShell on a day-to-day basis, but let's break through that ceiling. Let's get to some of that interesting stuff that we as developers could use. And let's even try a little PowerShell on Mac or Linux. Streams have been on another level this year, and it's only January. Thank you, Ancient Coder. Wow, I really appreciate that. That's terrific. The latest open source show discussed diversity and inclusion just recently. Yes, it did, Chris. That's our friend Space Shot. Yes, absolutely. They have been doing that, and it's something that I think is very important to Microsoft as a whole, as a corporate citizen, to make sure that we're not just employing, people that meet all of a certain level of criteria, but let's include other folks that maybe aren't 100% in one area, but are really great at different things. let's make sure that they have an opportunity here. Is there a black dot on the camera? Oh, no. What is that? Is there something up there on the camera? Ugh. These streams in January are on a rainbow beard level. Oh, thank you. I think that's a thing. Is that a thing? Didn't notice until then. Yeah, now I'm seeing it. It's right there. Let's see what we can do here real quick. Hang on. Stand by. Let's see. I'm going to go eeny, meeny. Let's go over here. Let's fix this. Let's see what we can do. Do a thing. And if I come back over here. Nope, it's still there. That's weird. That is weird. You know what I can do? Lick your finger and wipe it like your mom. Now that's just wrong, Robert Tables. A dead pixel. I don't think it's a dead pixel. That'd be weird if it is. It's got to be something like that. Let's do this. I'm going to minimize Word over here, and let's see if we can hop over. I need to change my configuration slightly here in order to get back into writing some code. Let's see. I need to do this. I'm going to go over to that, and I need to hide that. No, that, this. See if we can get our stuff back up and working here, and we can discuss and write some code. Where is it? Chat box. Let's make the chat box. Let's move it around here. This is code editing on the fly. Let's see what I can do. Make this work. Put the chat box up there. Yeah, that works. I think that works. Let's go over here. There we are. Look, I'm back. Back to writing code. Back to our normal layout over here. Black dot or bust. See, the black dot's gone. Right? All right. I wanted to take a look at... So next Tuesday, Tyler's going to join us. We're going to talk about PowerShell type things. I'm looking at another guest for the week after that. I haven't confirmed yet. But later in the month, I have Matt Veloso joining us. Not gone. I think it is. It's gone enough for me. Matt Veloso is the technical advisor to an executive at Microsoft. I'll just leave it at that. And we're going to talk about some of the cool things that are happening in our industry, some of the trends, some of the things that we should be paying attention to as developers to kind of steer our learning process. And I think that's going to be something that, similar to how we did today, where it was mostly chatting around technology, around our industry, that's going to help guide some of us and our careers, perhaps for the next 6 months, maybe even the next year. Don't clean it, buy a new one. I'm going to have to burn it down and throw it away. I tell you. No, there is no black dot there. There is no black dot. I'm going to play some music in the background here. Let me play Purple today. So this is music from our friend Mr. Carl Franklin. It's music to code by. It's scientifically engineered. It's designed to get you in the flow, to get you in the groove, so that whatever task it is you might be working on, all your other worries can just kind of fade away, and you can focus on that task, whether it's writing code, or maybe it's doing homework, or doing just chores around the house, chores outside the house. I got to shovel the driveway later. Help get you focused, and like I said, make all those other worries fade away into the background. Thanks so much, Carl. We really appreciate you allowing us to share and listen to your music. And folks, if you want to get your copy of the music, go to mtcb.pwop.com. You can download, you can buy the entire 18 songs, I think it is right now, and have that on your iPod, on your iPhone, on your Android device, or you can download the app, musictoflowby.com. You'll get 3 songs free just for downloading, and you can get a subscription and get the rest of the songs as they come out. Very cool stuff. Now's the time for buying new 4K quality, several thousands of dollar camera. No, not John really likes the quality of the camera and the presentation that we've had here, but I need to work on getting a much higher quality camera like that. That might be a little overkill for just the little stream that I'm doing here. Matt is one of your favorites recently on Twitter. Twyler's one of your favorites on the PowerShell team. Feeling personally acknowledged and loved by me by the guest lineup. Oh, terrific. Lighting first, if anything. So I have been talking to our friends at Elgato. I'm thinking about getting my hands on those very, very cool new key lights they have. I'm going to open up our browser here, and I'm going to run out to our Fritz and Friends organization out here. This is where we've been working on some of our projects, and in particular, recently, we've been working on projects for the Stream Deck. Now, the Stream Deck it's the little gadget that I have here that I use to run the stream. So here's what my current screen looks like that has all the music loaded for Music to Code By that we play here. And I can navigate around and turn on and off different things. This is a different configuration that I use because I had a guest on from Skype. So I have different configuration. I have different things that I need to do while I have our guest joining us. A higher quality cam can see the dot better. Now cut that out, Plutonin. Gee willikers. It's not that crazy, all right? I want at least one of those as well. I kind of agree with you. I'm a huge fan of the Stream Deck. Now, we've been doing some development. The latest version of the software that comes for the Stream Deck has the ability to write custom plugins. So the custom plugins use a WebSocket model to communicate from either an exe or a web page back and forth to this application. So it's a WebSocket. I can target WebSockets with .NET Core and C#, so we've been using those tools to interact with the Stream Deck. And you can see I even wrote a plugin here called .NET Core Unit Test. And it's really good. It's getting there. But as we were starting work on that project the other night, this was on Tuesday night stream, we ran into some problems with the templates that we've been building. So this is part of a toolkit that we've been building that includes a .NET Standard library. Here it is, called Stream Deck Lib. It's out there on NuGet. You can download and try it. We have some unit tests that exercise that. And then I've also got a .NET Core template that some of the folks in the community, some of the pair programmers you see there in the chat room have been contributing to. Great stuff. And you can see down here, this is actually running on Azure Pipelines. Deployments, it deploy all the way out to NuGet? Is it succeeding in making that final push out to NuGet? And some of the folks, Hugo and Auth0 Bobby, have been submitting pull requests to make the documentation a little bit better, to make the development experience better. So we've got some great updates now on the README here, so you can see how to use this. Is there a Fritz and Friends Twitter account yet? No, there isn't, Mike. I've been itching to get back into the Stream Deck project, hopefully this weekend. Hey, and there's never any pressure on this. This is something that we're developing together as a group of friends, as a community, to take those technologies that we love, .NET, PowerShell, C#, Azure DevOps, and wrap the Stream Deck with all that technical love that we know, and make it easier for other folks in our community to build tools for the Stream Deck. They're doing great jobs with the docs. I had to start with an issue. What is a .NET? And immediately responsive to helping out. Yes. So, right, how do you install the project templates, right? Here's easy instructions to get up and running. Node, there's Node capabilities as well. Over here, we have an emulator that acts like these, that acts like the device, so you can actually test without having a device. Carrie has a key light in a box in the corner. They were back ordered. Ooh, you need to take it out of the box. So I gotta check into a key light. I have these little shop lights that I use I got for $3 at Home Depot. You can find me talking about that on my blog. Chef Brent is here. Good morning, sir. Yeah, looks like I saw your Twitter last night. It looks like you've got you got a bum light there coming in the box for you. But otherwise, looks really nice. The key light devices. So there's a couple pull requests here. We can do some reviews on this. And I think, did we have anything here for the emulator? And I want to show you what I've been doing with this dashboard project. There's a pull request here for the emulator. Externalizing environment settings. This is an important one, I think. This is actually Auth0 Bobby. The current implementation uses a config file for hard-coded values. This is in our Node emulator. So you can start up an emulator, point it at your plugin, and it will allow you to key in at the command line different things that you want to do with buttons. So you can actually see and trigger the events and debug your plugin without actually running the Stream Deck. Awesome lighting system other than that bad panel that you got. Yeah, okay. Everybody has defects in products every now and again. So the configuration for that emulator was hard-coded. What's been added here is a dependency on .env to allow the use of environment variables to pass those configuration options at runtime. So this also helps a little bit about what Robert Tables is working on, where we might be able to take the emulator and put it into a container. And that'll make it real easy for us to get it up and running without having to install Node on some folks' systems, and to start it and stop it nice and cleanly. Let's see. The difficulty of lighting is not to get powerful lighting, but the diffusion is very hard to get right for proper good video. Agreed, Stelzy. And you saw a little bit of that with the reflection off of the white walls that I have here. I don't diffuse my lights. I bounce them so that I get reflection off, and you see this wonderful mug here. So I'm going to scroll down here. So Hugo had some comments about this, about formatting and getting the README updated with some of the information for the emulator. This looks pretty good. Derek chimes in, if we're going to support .env, I'd advocate for supporting both the config and the .env, changing code to use ternary for those bits that are supported in the .env. So that's pretty good, right? So you can either hard code your code config or pass it as an environment variable. Got to get some quotes out the door. Catch you later, Mike. Thanks for joining us. To catch as these values are environment specific, we cannot have sensible defaults for, yeah, the path here does get a little weird. Some of these could have default values. I think we're okay to merge this. Just taking a look, the files that were changed. So a .env example, okay. Yeah, some of these you're gonna be stuck whether it's Mac, Linux, or Windows. So a little bit of an update here in the README. How to edit the configuration and use that. Starting and stopping the emulator. So now we can do npm start. Nice. I like that. I like that. And then the config.js, instead of having sample plugin exe or sample plugin, has process env, the WinExe name or the OSX exe name. That makes sense. Excuse me. Package.json now has a start that calls node index.js. Nice. I think that's kind of a sensible update there and a reference to .env. So, chat room, if you're okay with it, I'm going to merge this. I think this makes sense to include now. And we can kick this off. Right, where'd it go? Great update. This makes it easier to get started and configure the emulator. All right, merge that. Yes, merge. Comment. Carrie agrees. Carrie says so. That means we must do it. So we did. And I've got to apologize. I turned off all of our follow notifications, our resub notifications. Thanks so much to everybody with the follows today. Win OBS Twitch. Mike Eaton with a resub, 6 months. That's going to put you into a new mug there. I think I put you into the red mug now. Thanks so much for that. It's either red or blue. I can't remember which one's which. Let me mouse over it and it'll tell me. It'll put you into the blue mug. Very cool. Thank you. Let's see. And I know I saw some other folks with the resubs earlier. Thank you so much for all that. And of course, for every sub, we're going to donate to Black Girls Code this quarter. And we'll make sure that those folks get our support. Quiltony is here. Oh my gosh, we did not summon the Quiltony. Not this time. No. But we'll have some fun here. We'll merge some things around. A wild Quiltony appears. There she is. I get all tongue twisted when I see Quiltony. It's the red braids is what it is. Make sure you... I'm going to throw a shout out there into the chat room for Quiltony. She's doing... she, of course, does quilting live on Twitch. If that's something... Those types of crafts are something that you're interested in, check it out. She's doing some really interesting things there. It's also raise money for St. Jude. So... check her out. If there's all kinds of folks that we want to support who do crafting, who make things. I don't see her here. We had, and I'm gonna forget this. Is it My 3D Extruder? I want to make sure that I'm probably. Oh my gosh, and there's a sub. I've got to acknowledge that sub. I don't see it here. But I want to make sure you check out her stream as well. Is she here? I don't. So she's on the West Coast. No. But she has a bunch of 3D printers with multiple nozzles, including the world's only multicolor 3D printer. You've got to check out her stream because she's building all kinds of neat things with 3D printing. I thought it was My Multi Extruder. Oh, I'm blanking on this. Moz, thanks so much for resub with a tier 3. Hello. Getting all the emotes, lots of support for our friends at Black Girls Code. Very cool. Yes, there's some hype for it right there. Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm glad you liked the interview. Yeah, it's I think I'm a little privileged that I am able to reach out and get some of these folks who are leaders in our industry to talk to us and answer our questions in this very, authentic medium where, you know what, you saw it was John sitting in a conference room, right, at the office, and he was able to join us and talk about what it's like to be hired. I'm really happy that he was able to join us, and from the closing comments I saw from him on Skype, he was very happy to talk to you as well. He really enjoyed the time we had together today. Yes, Robert, we are living in the future. It's amazing.
Oh my.
Multicolor. Just joined. Who got hired? No. I've got to turn back on the notifications here. Jamie Singleton with a tier 1. Thank you so much. Jamie is a colleague on my team. I got to turn back on these notifications here. Oh my gosh. Let me turn it up. Let's turn back up Steve here. Nobody got fired. Adrian. Not today. There's a test from me. There it is. And see, this is my guest settings here. We actually, the Rainbow Beard should say Rainbow Beard build. Not challenge, but build 2019. And we're going to push that number, not 5,000. We're going to go to 7,000. I'm looking for it. Where's the goal? The goal's here. There it is. Let me update that. That'll refresh. There you go. When we get to 7,000, I'll dye my beard rainbow for build. And yes, Mrs. C Sharp Fritz was saying, wash that off my face. But I did reach out. I mentioned to a couple of our friends in marketing about we might be doing a rainbow beard at Build, and they think it's going to be terrific. Not the eyebrows, no. But there's Jamie Singleton. Hey, Jamie, thanks so much for joining us. So there we go. Co-therapist, it was met. We had a few streams with the rainbow beard. Yes, last week. If you look at last week's video on demand, you can find that here on Twitch. You can also find it over on the YouTube channel. You'll see where I actually went in Visual Studio colors. I had purple on one side. I had blue on the other. Right, purple for Visual Studio 2017, blue for Visual Studio Code, and I had orange, the debugger color, in the middle. Planned that perfectly, and there's a great picture Jamie has of the two of us on campus right after I got it dyed, and it's nice and bright and thick and loud. It was a great beard. It's not as my beard isn't as impressive as Mike Eaton's beard. All right, can we call that out? Mike's got an amazing beard. If I get to 10,000 and Quiltoni gets to 5,000, you will make me body paint you. Oh dear Lord. Woo! That's going to get a little crazy. All right. So that was our one pull request we had for the emulator. And like I said, Robert Tables, you can find him streaming a little bit later in the day. So let me make sure we call out Robert Tables with a shout out. There we go. Drop Robert a follow. Let him know that you're interested in learning about containers and some of the things he's working on. Really great stuff over there. I thought it was My Multi-Extruder. Yeah, My Multi-Extruder. Let's make sure we get her a shout out. She's doing some really great stuff there. 4 p.m. Eastern today, you can find Robert Tables. There's My Multi-Extruder. And she has her 3D printers printing something every day that you tune in and see her. Make sure you check that out. Adrian's going to be streaming later today. All right. We'll make sure we get one over there. There we go. So many great developer and creative streams. Absolutely. And it's something I want to make sure that we grow and we appreciate, because these are all folks that are sharing things and want to help us learn together here on Twitch, right? There's other folks that are doing it on YouTube and also on Mixer, and they're doing some great things also. So check everybody out. I'm just partial to folks here on Twitch right now. I did have a talk yesterday with some of the folks at Twitch, and we're going to try and do a stream from Twitch offices in February. Keep an ear open for that here on the channel. I'll create an event for it when we get that locked down. But yeah, I'm gonna go up to New York City and we're gonna do it live with Twitch from their offices, writing some code together with them. 2019 is the year of massive expansion. Yes, there's a whole new group of streams coming. Absolutely. Alex Rocks, thanks so much for the follow. I appreciate that. So let me jump in. This is the toolkit. This is what builds that template and things. And Hugo has an update for us to fix the deployment script using Windows or PowerShell. So update the README file, which had next steps to include a sample color block for reference. Make it more visual than just a hex or RGB code. That kind of makes sense. Update the template CS project to include the next steps README file. Now this is important. When we create a new project, right, and you've got a template that's delivered to you, I don't know about you folks, but I run into the blank sheet of paper problem. It's intimidating. What do I do? Does it work? There's a good first start. And then what are the next steps? How do I get started using this template? And there's right, it's what are the next steps? Where can I make a change and make that first impact? And what Hugo has here, and this is really nice, is that jump off point with a nice little README that'll pop open and you can go through it, click into, and learn more about the template. Code Rushed is live now too. Lots of solid colors. Oh yeah, I'm sure. Corey Weathers from Twilio is firing up his stream for the first time today too. Around 2 p.m. Let's throw some follows over there to Corey CLW. So what I'm trying to do, what you're going to find me doing here in the next few weeks, provided we get that Twitch partnership, and I'm nearly positive we're going to get it. I'm going to set up a stream team, and we're going to put all the great developers that are writing code here together on that stream team, so you have one place to go to see everybody that's writing code live on Twitch, because there's folks in some different categories. I want to make sure that you can see some of that. We need a DC March for Fritz partner. No, we don't need to do that. The Twitch folks they're aware of what's going on. They're poking around. I can see one or two folks out there, and that's okay. I'm no pressure, none at all. I think we're already getting it. There is an awesome repo. Yes, there is. There's an awesome repo of what is it? Twitch developers, I think is what it's called, or something like that. Awesome developer streams. Here we go. So awesome developer streams. There's the link. And these, right, check out all the folks here that are doing all kinds of different topics. So I know that guy. Let's see if we scroll down a little bit more. Right, we know her, right? So as folks come online, they're getting added to this list. You know, when we're sure that they're doing things on a regular basis. You know, they're not just showing up, doing one or two streams, and then wandering away. You see that with folks that start new podcasts or start a blog. But take a look at this. There's some really, really good content here. Go out and check out, and drop that .NET bot over there. Let them know that you visited with me. And I'm happy to see some of these folks and drop their emotes into our chat room as well. Learn about them. One other option would be to provide a template that does something similar to the ASP.NET Core template. So the template that we do have does do something. No, it doesn't have a counter with it. That's our sample. That's not a bad idea there, Code Therapist. Kind of did the same for your info panels on your channel. Yes. And our friend Talk to Me Gooseman, Eric Gooseman, has he built an extension that you can see on Twitch. I have it wired up to my stream team right now that I'm on, Positive AF. There's a number of folks from the creative community there, like Quill Tony. No, that's not right. That's not right. Like Quill Tony.
Wait, let me explain something to you.
And other folks that do some creative things that you might be interested in checking out. That's in that Positive AF team. You can not just wire it up to a stream team, a real stream team, but you can create ad hoc teams and add folks to it as well. So
make it so.
And check that out if you're another streamer and you're interested in that. You like that Shopify store with the Twitch widget. So we added that Twitch widget to Quill Tony's Shopify store. That's available over on my GitHub if folks are interested in wiring that up. I lobbed it out here. It is, where is it? Show more activity. We need to go back a little bit further. Nope, it's not here. There it is. Twitch channel status. So this is primarily JavaScript and a couple images to put status, Twitch status, right on your channel, right on your webpage. So if I go to quilltony.com, right now it says follow me now. But when she goes live, this will change automatically and say now live with a little blinking red light. It's pretty neat. So there's her website. You can check that out. And then the little status indicator, I have it forked and available there. All right. Let me go back over. I want to show this, the Stream Deck dashboard, and I want to talk about the final one of these. Kendra Little, thank you for the follow. I appreciate you joining us. I'm going to merge this in. This looks like a couple of really good updates to the README, to that PowerShell script. Yeah, look at that. The CS project, so it includes the README. Good. Another, the PowerShell script that's going to go in our sample plugin. So this is kind of a challenge that we have as well. We don't have a good way to migrate from our canonical example, our sample plugin, into the template so that they stay in sync. 10,000 follows. Let's do it. Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
You can do it!
You can do it, Quiltony. I know you can. Thanks for these updates. They make the template and more user-friendly. And of course, every time that we get a commit, that we get a contribution from somebody in one of the projects that we're monitoring, you'll see the ticker up at the top of the screen. I call it my GitHub scoreboard. I'm going to refresh that. You'll see it start giving those folks credit so that folks get, we recognize some of those folks that are helping us out. So you can see Mike Jolly and Codeman Codes, Dave Glick helping us out this month here on the channel with Stream Tools and Oil Tank Vision. We worked on a little bit this month, not too much. I do want to make sure that I call out, this is the last day for Bits for Bytes this month. Tuesday next week, Lannon's going to join us, and we've got some things that we've been talking about around putting a little bit of sentiment analysis into our Stream Tools. That's going to be interesting to check out. What did bot say? Ignoring hyperlink from cooldown is active. It shouldn't be on a cooldown for the hyperlink. But there's a live stream notice link there from Mr. Demon Wolf for WordPress to automatically do that. And it does a lot of the same things that you saw me write. Neat stuff. Hey, Potato Quality is here. Thank you so much for the sub. I saw that a little bit earlier. I appreciate that very, very much. Potato Quality, I'm going to forget your real name. We were talking last night. She's doing PowerShell streams as well. Let's throw a shout out there to Potato Quality. There we go. Check her out. She's just started in the last month or so, building out some streams, working with PowerShell. Some great stuff coming there. And I'm sorry, I'm blank. See, I get wrapped up in people's names and yeah, there it is. Chrissy Lemaire. That's who it is. Thank you so much. Johnny Nibbles. Now, why didn't those bits pop up? Do I have the bits still turned off? It should have come through.
This is a test bit alert.
Yes. Nope, they're still disabled. Rats. But Johnny Nibbles, thank you so much for that kind cheer. 500 bits. We'll make a matching donation to Black Girl's Code, and that's going to bump you up. I was talking about Bits for Bytes this month. I'm not going to be writing any code here, but I can call you Potato Quality. So December, the leading cheer at the end of the month was Lannon BR. He's going to join us on Tuesday, and we're going to pair program together. And right now, it looks like Off Zero Bobby is going to wrap up at the top of the cheer list, and we'll set up a pair programming stream with him sometime in the next few weeks. No problem, Lannon. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm just going to look at a couple more pull requests, and then we'll send the video off to the archive. All right. So we merged this one from Hugo. Good stuff there. I worry about this one from Stelzy. Instead of copying files to the plugin folder when we deploy, this pull request creates an NT file system junction between where you build your project and that plugin folder that we need to deploy to. I worry about this. It's a neat idea, but I worry about our code changing somebody's disk layout. I don't know if I want to put it in the primary register and restart script. That's what Docker volume mapping was going to be about. Yeah, and it breaks on a Mac. We are considering Mac for this, yes. So right? And as a concept, to get this wrong is going to break folks. It's going to damage, not physically, but it's going to damage how they interact on their system. I would rather pull this out as a separate script if folks want to deliver and build their applications that way. Conceptually, it's a good idea, but I think as a project maintainer, I'm not sure I want to own changing the layout of your disk. That's my concern with that. And folks on Mac and on Linux file systems, you can link folders so that you deploy and it actually jumps right through to that other folder. I think that's a great practice for folks, but I want to make sure that folks know they're doing that when they do it, and it doesn't just all of a sudden, surprise, we've remapped your folders on disk. So I'm going to write a little comment here. Can we move this into a separate script so that it's not the default behavior? Yeah. It's a neat idea, but I don't want to break somebody's disk layout. Let me take you over. I was working on this project, Stream Deck Dashboard. This concept is what drove me to want to build Stream Deck plugins. Think about this. We'll get that in a second. As a developer who uses a Stream Deck, right? I have these buttons that play all kinds of funny sounds.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home? Hey, think would fly. Think.
And that's nice. That's fun. That's great. I can do different things here.
Wow.
And folks will smile and laugh around me. And when I'm on a conference call with folks, maybe John Montgomery, I can drop in these sound effects.
Oh my.
And we have a good time. But there's more you can do besides sound effects, right? I can automatically send tweets, right? Or change my Twitter status. And that's what I do with these buttons. I change my Twitter name so it says now live on there. And I've got some other buttons in other configuration that do those things. And this button down here, it doesn't show it in the application, but it shows me down here on the actual device how many viewers there currently are watching. Yeah, there you go, Stealthy. You can execute scripts as well. Yeah, lots of possibilities that you can do with this. This is a plugin that shows the CPU percentage, but I'd like to be able to do developer things. I see these buttons as an auxiliary dashboard, and we called this the Developer Auxiliary Dashboard on Tuesday night, where I can press a button to do something, but I can also report stuff on that button as well. So I built, and I started building out this .NET Core Unit Test button. And the idea with this is I want to be able to run unit tests and have it report the status right here. One button, deploy a cloud application. There's another button that we can add, another action we can add into the mix here. I want to be able to show maybe code coverage as a button. Maybe I want to be able to show if there's been a pull request, show my pull request statuses, the number of issues as different buttons, and maybe when I touch that button, it actually navigates out to that GitHub page for that project. So this is a little bit of where I'm going. Now, right now, I can't configure this, right? Some of these other buttons like Mr. Trollolo over here, this plays music, but it has these other configuration things here that I can do. These are called properties by the Elgato Stream Deck. And these extra things here, these are actually HTML fields. And as I interact with them, it sends those values over a WebSocket into my plugin for me to interact with. Now, the images that appear on the button, right, I can set those from a file. I can create a new icon. I can get them from different places. This is the default. I made it this purple checkbox, right? We got these from a free, open source, publicly available image repository. But I need to, at some point, build property inspectors here so I can specify this button looks at this repository, this project to test. I'm doing the maths and seeing it if I can afford one, Gareth says. I am in the middle of discussions with some folks from Elgato. No guarantees yet, but we may be giving some away in the month of February. And I'm also waiting for confirmation. We have a sponsor that's going to be coming on in February and March that's going to have a major raffle that I think folks in this chat room are really going to be excited to hear about. But once I get final confirmation from their team, I have confirmation on my side. Once I have confirmation now on their side, we'll announce and talk about that in the days and weeks ahead, and we'll do a lot. 125 is a lot of money for 15 keys. It is pretty epic. It is. Mischief managed. Oh, there will be lots. Lots and lots. So with this button, right, it's not actually doing anything. When I press it, right, it's giving me a error here. If I stop and restart it, it's going to hang. But it'll actually go into a running state. Yeah, I'm going to stop this just so you can hear it. Just so you can see it. Go ahead, go away. Goodbye, Stream Deck app. In order to get these plugins to reload, you actually need to recycle the application. Developers in these gadgets add a SDK and bingo, you have a developer and have a extension plugin frenzy. Yes, right? And you see that with Visual Studio Code. You see that with Visual Studio, that when you can extend things and you can build that ecosystem, developers will get excited about your product, and you can start doing some very interesting things, encouraging those folks to interact with your product. Oh, look at that. Lee's jumping right into my favorite.
60% of the time, it works every time.
It does. Let me go up to this. Not that one. I was over here in music because I have some empty button spaces there. So now this is attaching the debugger. Let me see. Where's it attaching? Yep, it attached to the right one. And there it is, debugger launch. So now if I click on this button, nope, it's not working for me. I've done bad things. You should see it change over here as it kicks things off. Nightmare, of course, there's only a 10% chance of that. There it goes. Now it's running. It's got this little run icon, and it's going to run my tests. And I just pointed it at another unit test project on disk. I hard-coded it. And when it's done running, it should come back and show me positive or negative whether it ran. And all I'm doing is running .NET Watch in the background in a hidden process on disk. We should see this update any second now. Today, come on. If I pause here, I might be able to see it. Nope. Nope. Go back to this. I want to see that run. Gotta play some music. I can't just be quiet here. Oh my gosh. Okay. Not that guy. He bothers me. Okay, so here's a thing. It comes back and it's still in this state, right? If I click on it again, there it's running. And then. So I need to save and come back with the appropriate state of this. So there's a couple things here that are interesting. Used to have a Nyan Cat test runner with music back in the Ruby days. Yes, there's something fun. But what I'm finding about this is I think we have a memory leak. And the reason I think there's a memory leak is if I head over to Task Manager, right, and if I open Stream Deck, there's 10 child applications, and these are all the different plugins and things that are running, including the just-in-time debugger, right, is hanging out here, and it wants me to attach. That's fine. We'll do one of those. And it forks and attaches to the process. That's nice. And that's Visual Studio 2019. That stinking set settings. Oh, wait do you see. I think we might have an option there. So it's still running. It's not coming back properly. So I need to figure out what that is. But if I scroll down here, what do you see this? Look at all these .NET Core hosts. Where is it? I had StreamHub host CLR. Service Hub. That's not it. Console window host. Look at this, right? It's not properly closing these things when it's done. So I've got to somehow get it running, have it hanging in the background, and when we cancel it, appropriate release and shut down the application and release the WebSockets. And it's not doing that properly yet. And I think that's where we're going to start tomorrow, is debugging and going through that. Because, see, it's just kind of hanging here. And I want it to finish and show me the report. So we're going to have to go through that. And what Carrie's alluding to there with the stinking set settings. Let me close this. Yes, stop debugging. No. Let me stop this debugger, and I'm actually going to open that little dashboard. So, and we're going to add all kinds of options to this project, different actions and things that folks can interact with. And I love the ideas that we see there in the chat room. Push button to do a deploy, that type of thing. But inside of here, the actual plugin, which is, where is it? Unit test plugin. What this does is it actually starts up another process. Right, here it is. Here we go. Starts a new process. Here's the process information. Go into my Stream Deck lib test folder and run .NET Watch Test. So run the test and watch it for changes. And if I scroll down here, you can see as data is received, let's do something with it. So as data is received in that console window, change the image so that it's the little test runner guy. But when we get the results, when it says total tests, let's set that button appropriately from the test results. So do we now have two VS 2019 attached to one process? No, actually, they're two attached to two different processes that are being managed. Does the attached debugger code trigger every time the Stream Deck talks to the plugin? Yes, it does. So we need to build for release mode so that it doesn't, because release mode, it will not. So I think that's where we're going to leave off today. I actually have a call here in about 5 minutes that I need to make sure I get to, and I've been terrible about getting to my calls on time after a stream. So here's what I want to do. I want to figure out, is there somebody out there that we can raid? I know I'm starting a little bit early here. So let's see, who's on Science and Technology right now? And see if we can set up a raid. Hello? Jittered. Thanks so much for the follow. I don't see Code Rush running right now. Is he on? Honest Dan Games is on. Yep. Let's see. Oh, he is on. But you know what? We rated him last time. We rated Mark last time. I want to make sure we spread a little bit of the love around, not constantly rating the same person every time. And there's a couple folks that we used to raid that haven't been around for a while either. You know what? Let's raid Honest Dan Games. I'm fine with that. Where is he? There he is. He is fun. He's working on, where'd it go? He's actually learning a little bit about AWS right now. So let's set that up. I'm going to set up that raid in just a few seconds. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you to John for joining us earlier. If you want to check out Honest Dan Games, just sit back, and we'll take you right over there. And this video will be available a little bit later today over on YouTube. Tomorrow, we'll do some more work on the Stream Deck and see if we can make this a little bit more robust, find our memory leak, and get it running properly. Alrighty. Take care, everybody. We will see you tomorrow. Take care.